Hello, and welcome to This Conversation Matters, a weekly show about the social issues shaping our communities, from race and inequality to justice, economic opportunity, and overall well-being. I'm Sheree Curry. Each week, I speak with experts and people with lived experience to help you better understand why these issues matter in our lives. So today we're speaking with my sister, Aisha Curry Magee, who is raising our nephew, King, son of our sister, Athena Curry, who has been missing now for 15 years since Memorial Day weekend, May 2011. And Aisha, over those years, you've been so strong, you know, doing all of these interviews when the media calls upon you, having been the first one to find out that she was missing. So tell us a little bit about Athena and that impact on you
Yeah.
over these years.
Yeah. So, when you see missing person cases on TV or you on movies, it's never like it is in the movies. Somebody goes missing or somebody dies and there's a next 48 and the next, the case is solved. And so in 2011, when Athena, our baby sister, first went missing, I mean, I had a bad feeling already in my stomach that maybe she was not alive because of the volatile relationship. And so I knew it was very urgent to get the police involved. And I just assumed that once the police got involved and the investigation started, that an arrest would be made, and somebody would be prosecuted and would there be resolution to the story. Never did I think that 15 years later, there's still no closure. She's still never been found. An arrest has not been made. There's no closure to the story. There's no convictions, no arrests, nothing. And so, Sister Sheree, I appreciate you in helping also throughout the years, keeping Athena's story alive. But I didn't think that year 15 I'd still be doing the interviews. And the hardest part about it is when I do them, I was doing a lot of them in the very beginning because I knew it was so important to keep her name out there, her story out there. I know there's a lot of other missing people who are not found, and I can relate to wanting answers to that. But every time I do an interview and I start from the beginning, it's trauma. I'm retelling the story over and over again, and I have to recount a lot. And the thing is, when Athena went missing, it wasn't until then that I discovered many things that she was going through in that abusive relationship. So I'm recounting all the things that our baby sister went through. And just to know that she was suffering from that type of abuse and violence just is heart-wrenching. And then I think often about what her last moments were. And so I have to retell that. And so for me, I've kind of over the past few years just said I can't do it. I can't do the interviews anymore because it's like PTSD. I'm reliving the
It is.
trauma.
It is.
Yeah. And really I just put it in God's hands is what I did. I said, vengeance is mine, said the Lord. Whatever we do on earth, I believe that we have to answer to God. And so I said, um, if we don't get justice here on earth, there will be justice served. So I'm raising our nephew King. And I said, with that, I have to just have my peace because the trauma to relive the story over and over again and tell over and over again, I was just like, I just, 15 years later, I just
Yeah,
go
yeah,
away.
it's been a long time. And you and Athena were so close. She was living with you at the time. And
Yeah.
we think we know what people are going through, right? We think what experiences we have when you're close, and we don't always tell our own story even to the people who are closest to us, whether that's out of fear or shame or not wanting to burden our loved ones, whatever the reason may be. And it's just so important for all of us as individuals to still talk, find someone that we can talk to, even if it's some kind of a hotline, to see about where we are in our space and how we can kind of get some of the help that we need. So Athena was in an abusive relationship, and the degree to what that abuse was, well, we are 15 years later, we are assuming that this is, the result of the abusive relationship. At the very least, what we know is her boyfriend claimed she stormed out of the house after a physical fight between the two of them. So even if we wanted to believe him that he did not do her any harm, I should say, any fatal harm, there was still harm because he was a man who was physically abusing a woman. And even if that is what made her storm out of the house that night, it's a result of what that relationship was.
Yeah.
It's There's so many aspects of it, right? That's heartbreaking in many ways for all young women who go through such things and the families as a result. We know that Black women, especially when they go missing, the police do not respond as quickly as they do when white women go missing. We know that the media does not respond as quickly or stay as involved as they do with certain white women. We can name a lot of white women who have gotten very large headlines, and there are very few. There's really no Black
Mhm.
women we can name who've gotten the headlines of a Chandra Levy, of a Gabby Petito, of there's so many names that we can name, and not a single one of them is Black. And of the Black missing, and often we end up finding out they were also murdered, it's usually a Black media person or someone else, Black, who maybe helped to elevate that story. And I think about the Finding Tamika story that Erica Alexander did a podcast on. It took Erica Alexander, actress from Living Single, who helped bring that to light, along with the advocacy of Tamika's family, some members of whom worked in the media, worked in PR to help bring that story to light. Not everybody gets that, but you talked also just about that trauma of having to relive it every time you do a media interview. So, what do you want to tell other people about the importance yet of staying strong, but yet also of needing, it's not moving on. I can't call it moving on, but it's making sure you're taking care of yourself at the same time.
Yeah. You know, I'm like addicted to like unsolved mystery cases now. And what I've saw on a lot of these were the family members who chose not to give up on fighting for their lost loved one, or, or the unsolved case. And there'd be some detective who saw the cold case and decided to come and help. And they're like, it's because that family member never gave up. That's the little thing in my heart that says, Aisha, even though this is painful, try your best to still don't give up and still tell our story, because it'll be that one person, that one detective, that one journalist, that one somebody who will pick up the case, give it new light, and maybe a new detective will be in charge, and then the case will finally be resolved. And that is my little umph to keep going. But so I could share with some people, like, if that's your hope to keep going, despite the trauma, try your best to keep going. However, I did take a back seat for a while when I realized for my mental health, it just was draining. It took too much recovery time for me emotionally to recover and just kind of be normal again emotionally. But find that healthy balance. And I would still say, if you can, get a village. It takes a village. And
Mhm.
that's how I've honestly kept going. What family, my sister, my friends who would say, I should have a little, somebody would like to do an article for your podcast. Would you be willing? And their nudges helped me just to sometimes like, okay, let's do it. Oh, let's not give up. And and also for those who are suffering, I want to just add this part in. Those who are suffering from domestic violence or any violence, please speak up and say something. The Wednesday, 2 days prior to Athena going missing, she was visiting Yusuf. She came home for a brief second to gather some clothes, to go back to his house. I did not know on that day this man had gotten to a physical altercation where she ran up the street, begged for her life. He dragged her by her hair. Neighbors came out to break up the fight. And this was all found out post her disappearance when we went to canvass the neighborhood and the police did their search. And the neighbor said that she ran up the street begging for her life, and he was beating her up in the street and was trying to drag her back to the house by her hair. That was the Wednesday.
Mm,
He said the neighbor said he wished he would have called the police. When
mm,
Athena came home to grab some clothes and ran back out, she had her hair pulled out. I guess she had bruises on her face. And I know this because she told her best friend, but she didn't tell me. And she
okay.
told her best friend and Yusuf, the boyfriend, both told me that she did not tell me because she knew if I knew, I was going to do something about it.
Mm,
That's what I'm supposed to do. Do
right.
something about it. She was
Right.
protecting him, protecting herself, whatever. So if I could say to any victim out there, it's not a burden. That's what family's
Mhm.
for. We're here to help you to get out of these situations. And I wish she would have told me.
Right.
I would have said, you're not going back over there.
Right.
Here we are, and I appreciate my village who helps keep me encouraged to just do something to keep her name out there because maybe one investigator will pick up the cold case and revisit it and we'll get closure ourselves.
And part of this too, when you talk about one, her not wanting to tell you, and not just that day, all the other days before that, and after, it's also, I'm gonna say, a self-protection. So, yes, she knew you would go over there and you would say something to Yusuf, and you would also, try to prevent her from seeing him again, but at the same time, just as she was picking up clothes to go back over there, she knew she would continue to go back to see him. It takes so long for people to actually break away and stay away
Yeah.
that it's self preservation, because once an abuser knows that you're trying to protect yourself, often they become even more violent.
Yes.
The number of people who have been victims of abuse who are in the middle of calling 911,
Yep.
and that erupts the abuser even more. The people who we know who get restraining orders and try to keep them away, and then that erupts them even more, and they don't follow the restraining orders, and they still come after them. So, in a way, if it's
Yeah.
possible, right, that she also knew that if you were to go down there and say something to Yusuf, it would have made the situation worse for her. And so it becomes this self-preservation. And at the same time, yeah, we also don't want people to know what we're going through. It's a combination of that, but it's good to hear that she had told someone,
Mhm. Yeah.
but what did the friend think and say at the time? Was Athena also telling her, "Don't tell anybody." And
Right.
then we want to honor our friendships and go, "Okay, well, I won't tell anybody."
Yeah.
You
They're
know?
so young. They're both 20 young girls, trying to navigate life themselves. And the friend, like you said, protecting the friend and really not reaching out to say, no, this is not something that I should protect.
Mhm.
You need to be saved from. And then the battered woman syndrome, uh, and, and I'll say this also for Athena and for any woman out there. You know, Athena was a warrior. Athena, warrior, the Greek goddess of war. And
Mhm.
I don't think that she even really saw herself as a victim. That she saw herself as a warrior and somebody who could protect herself. And women were not any match to a man. It is what it is. And um, fighting back is not. self-preservation. It's just a volatile situation, and I hope that any woman who realizes that if you're in something that's physically violent, just because you're fighting back to defend yourself doesn't mean you're safe from losing your life.
Right.
It actually adds fuel to the fire, in my opinion.
Right. It definitely can. So now let's talk about the greatness of Athena. I like, right, the god of, who she was named after, right? I'll say I was already in college when, Athena was born. And you're there in the house with
Yeah.
her, when she's born. Tell us about Athena as a child, and then as Athena as a teenager, and then, Athena deciding she wants to go live with her big sister. She wants to move from Oregon to Atlanta. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so she's the baby of 8, okay? The baby of 8. Our dad had, what, 6 girls, 2 boys. The baby of 8. And so she really did have, and she's just beautiful. She's our sister, but just, I think, just beautiful. So she grew up the baby. She really just a beautiful young girl. And I think she had the personality to go along with it. And she was adored and loved by all of us. She was just stylish. She loved music. She loved fashion. She was a protector of her friends. She was that friend who was going to fight for her friends. She seemed fearless. That was like her personality, and very strong-willed, like strong-willed personality. And I just remember just thinking maybe, it was because she was the baby that, maybe she was a little spoiled. But I really just, as I'm now a mother of my own, raising her son, oh my goodness, King reminds me of her. Just a very strong-willed, dominant personality. And I was like, okay, that was just, her personality trait. And so she just, Oregon, it's different, you know, and I left for the military when Athena was 4 going on 5. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm 18 and she's 4 going on 5. And so I was big sister off in the military, living the world too. And so when I would come home, she'd be like, "Big sister home." And I don't know why, me and her just had this special bond. It's just kind of like an unspoken, well, we shared rooms too until I went off into the military, right? I had to share rooms with my baby sister. But we shared rooms. I would come home and that was my girl. I would do her hair. I would send, packages home when I traveled overseas. And she became of age, and really her goal was to come. She wanted to be a pediatric nurse or doctor. And she was like, I want to come to, Georgia, have residency here so I can go off to college. And she was like, I'm going to come stay with you. And our dad he let her go. He was like, hey, she thinks she's grown. She has that strong little personality. She's yours. Have her.
One more out of the house.
That one, the
No.
last
Yeah, that's
one out the
yeah,
house.
yeah.
And so she comes to Georgia, stays with me and my ex-husband at the time, and goes and does her senior year in high school out here. And she walks across that stage, and I did not know it then, but she was 5 months pregnant with King walking across that stage. And so there was the secret kind of already begun at that point. Did not know that didn't even know she had a boyfriend. Didn't know any of these things, but discovered all these things um, post her graduation. So yeah, and that was just kind of her, maybe independent, strong-willed nature, um, and maybe protecting of. She adored me, and I think that she wanted to just protect whatever image she thought I may have of her. I'm like, I'm big sis. I'm not your mama. I'm big sis. But she still wasn't comfortable maybe sharing those parts of herself, and just her strong-willed nature, her independent nature also. But yeah, so
So
growing up
when
with
did
her.
you find out she was pregnant? How did she tell you, or did you just notice?
So that story was, um, to be frank, I was going through a divorce. It was going pretty tough in the house. And my ex-husband was like, "Well, your sister didn't go to college like she said she's going to go, and she's not looking for a job like she said she's going to look for." And I'm like, "Sis, my marriage is falling apart. My ex-husband's not going to be taking care of you if you're not working. bang together to get you, in college. I didn't know she's suffering from morning sickness. I didn't know she's pregnant. I don't know any what's happening. And then I'm like, I'm going through a divorce. Marriage is probably over. I don't know what I could do to keep us both in this house. And she was like, I don't want to stay with you guys anyways. And that's what she says. I'm going to stay with my boyfriend. And this is the first I'm learning she has a boyfriend. And so really, because my life at that time was extremely
Mhm.
chaotic, I just said, well, you're 18. You want to stay with your boyfriend? I don't even know where I'm going to be at. I just said, okay, you do that and I'll figure out my next steps. Well, I think that she went to go stay with him. And at that point, Yusuf, so it was, I did not know him at that time. She went to go stay with him. And I want to say maybe 3, 4 weeks later, don't quote me on the time. um, I'm out doing run errands, come home, and there's all her bags of clothes on my front porch because our door was locked. And I guess they were riding around the neighborhood waiting for us to get home. And that's when I first time meet Yusuf, and he says, "Hey, I'm bringing your sister back to you." He's like, "I can't do this." He's like, she's a little spoiled and a little entitled, right? And I said, "Okay, that could be her." And I said, and he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you're not obligated to take care of her, right?" I said, she can come back here. I said, why do you feel like you're so obligated? He looked like, what, you don't know? I said,
Okay.
What? He goes, oh, you don't know. She's pregnant. He said she's 5 months pregnant. I was like, that's how I found out.
Mhm.
And so that's why she wanted to go stay with it. That was really the backstory to
Intrigue behind
everything.
it. Yeah.
And I was like, and she was in the car, his car at that point, and he came up to the front porch, and he brought the
So
news.
she didn't even hear him telling you that.
Nope. So I marched down to the car. I'm like, sister, you're pregnant? You're 5 months? This all could have been handled so different.
Mhm.
The level of grace that she could have had, with me and my ex-husband, it was so different. It was just like we couldn't figure out why she didn't want to enroll in college or go to do anything or get a job like
Mhm.
was the original plan because she was trying to survive she was trying to figure out her next step just to
Right.
become a
And thought
mom.
you couldn't do some of that.
Yeah. And that's how I found out.
Okay. And what she didn't know, and that you also probably don't know, since we have different mothers, is our father had a woman pregnant at the same time, my mother. That my mother's gonna probably hate that I'm gonna tell this story. But but my mother was pregnant in high school and she graduated
Okay.
pregnant,
Okay.
with Samantha.
Okay. I did not
So
know that. I did
yeah,
not.
so interesting that that kind of played out that way, but a very different
Yeah.
story, and outcome, right? Because they got married. That's probably why they got married. My grandmother wasn't gonna have that, you know, but the
I was
difference of the
always trying to do that
telling.
math. Okay.
Mhm. Yep,
I
yep.
was,
I was probably about 12 when I finally did the math and, I knew how
okay.
old she was, but she's like, "Oh, yeah, but wait a minute, she woulda still have been in high school when she got pregnant." I knew she wasn't in high school when Samantha was born, but, "Oh, yeah, but
Right.
wait, she would have been." So, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
but
Yeah.
so then she spent that time with you, but she still kept going back and forth with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. She kept going back and forth with him at that time. And as a matter of fact, kind of like while I was trying to figure out my next move, she was going back and forth with him. I think, a couple times she maybe went home to Oregon, to stay with some friends, and as a matter of fact, even one point time here, I even put her, while she was pregnant, into a women's shelter. That was upon the discovery I'm sorry, I'm gonna get the timeline wrong. Maybe that was after King was born. It was shortly after he was born, because that was when I was discovering more that's when I was really learning about the abuse.
Okay.
And, that King was just an infant, and because I was working 2 jobs, no matter what I would do to be like, "You don't let this man around," she would do it behind my back, so I said, "Okay, for protection, Imma put you in a place where he can't access you." And so, long story short, the day King got because he was born with jaundice, and the day that he got released from the hospital is the day that I moved into my new apartment, and I
Mm,
picked her and King up from the hospital, and they came to my new apartment, and now that was it. So it was me, her, and King from day one. And that was, we were trying to figure out motherhood together, so that's how
He
that was.
was born what month?
January 17th.
Mhm.
He was born a preemie. He was supposed to be born, I can't remember when in February, but maybe towards the middle of February. So he was born a preemie, and then he had jaundice, so he stayed in the hospital, I think, for an extra week. God's timing, I feel, was perfect. Like, literally, the day he was due to be released was the day I moved into my new apartment.
Yeah, he was about I think he was about 6 months old when I first met King. I think so. I
Yeah,
think it was
because
that summer.
Centennial Olympic Park, was that Centennial Olympic Park that time when you guys came
Yes,
to
yes,
Orlando?
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. He was,
Yeah.
man, yeah, okay, that's right, because you guys came, he was born in January, you guys came, what, June? June?
Yeah, I
Was
think
it
it was
June
June,
or?
probably June or July. Yeah.
Yep, so he's about 6 months old, yeah. So, yeah.
But yeah. But it's hard for anyone to lose a loved one regardless of the age, but to lose them so young
Mm,
is it's extra hard for so many other reasons as well.
yeah, and then she didn't
Let
get to see her son grow up. That was the gut-wrenching part, like,
Right.
it just begun.
Yeah. And so, mom and dad. So so our father and your mom, and how have they been through all
Oh,
this? As well as our siblings.
yeah. You know, I would say, our dad, he has a personality that he accepts, I think, death in a way that's he accepts it. Like, he accepts the reality of what is, and he speaks a lot about, he just pretty much says, "We're all gonna die one day," and I know it hurts. Oh, let me reverse it. My mom is doesn't have it together. She was able to, like, I think, survive because she was working, as a teacher, and
Mhm,
she stayed busy, but once she retired, she severely declined, and we're still trying to help her through that right now. And
mhm,
because of her inability to handle the reality of the situation, my dad has held it all together. He's always been that rock. And
mhm.
so, sometimes when we talk about it, and this he breaks down.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Yeah. And it's
and
hard when the rock of the family breaks down, because when the rock of the family breaks down, then and I understand the pressure he has, because he's trying to hold it, which is why I try to hold it together for everybody else, because I don't want
yeah,
them to,
yeah. So
you know?
you've been amazingly strong, you really have. And
Yeah.
I know one of the things I remember you telling me before was, you never intended on having children.
Yeah.
And yet, in a way, Athena left you this gift of king.
Yeah.
And so tell me about that, raising him, and he's not that far from graduating high
Ah,
school,
man,
getting
he was
close.
16, so it's so funny. I tell my parents, in a joke, this is my running joke. I'm here in Georgia with King, and they're in Oregon. And then the running joke I always say is, um, y'all miss y'all daughter, right? Come get y'all grandson, because he is her. He
Yeah,
is her. I mean, I'm like,
you
I
see
know this
everything of
for a
her in
fact.
him. Mhm.
He has everything of her in him. Like, this whole personality that he has. So she's Athena, Greek goddess of war. He's king, and his energy fits that name. He is the king of the castle. He is the king of his friends. He is the king. And I'm like, these two right here, they are really dominant personality traits and types. And, but I'm like, I've seen this before. I've seen this before. And to me, he looks like her. Just his nose, just certain things about him. And so, yeah. So here it is. I'll say, if I did not get the blessing to have been able to adopt and raise King, the pain of losing my sister would have been devastating.
Mhm.
I have survived because of him.
Yeah. And you've had to because of him
And
too.
I've had to, and I get a piece of her still, and
Mm,
I get to, like, honor her every day. And I know King would see it differently. He'd be like,
mhm,
"Oh, you're not the best mom in the world," but he doesn't understand that. Oh my God, the love I have for him, and how I try to honor him to honor my sister, our sister, and so that I mean I think God knew for the entire Curry family and extended family and friends and all of us, blessing us with King to be able to keep him and raise him was what we needed to not all lose it.
Mhm.
Because if this didn't happen, the devastation in my heart would be beyond. I don't even can't even think about that.
Right. Right. I know. I know.
Yeah.
So what we hope is to still bring Athena home one day. And
Yeah.
we know 15 years later, that's not going to be the kind of outcome that, we would all like to have. It's not likely. And I know in the first week, as you said, you already kind of knew what that outcome probably was
Yeah.
and hoping for a good detective to pick up a cold case. I know early on, the Atlanta police were being fairly useful. They may not have done as much in the first 24, 48 hours, but I think, I kind of heard they've done what they can. I know when I talk to other women or other families with missing women in their families, including a family right here in Minnesota where I live, and I'm gonna name her. Brittany Clarity is a woman who went missing and was later found murdered within a week or 2 weeks after she went missing. But in speaking with her sister too, the person who killed her was actually from Atlanta, and she talked about what the Atlanta police had also done in terms of other things that man had been involved in. And I've heard from other people who somehow Atlanta gets involved in some of these cases. Tell me a little bit about that in terms of that, where they were helpful, how they could have been more helpful, and then why we can still have some hope in that cold case and somebody picking up that cold case.
Yeah, as most people probably know, when you're an adult and you don't have any mental health issues or no drug issues, you can go missing and they're not gonna do anything about it because you can come and go as you please. And it really was me just actually bringing that in the names. And because Yusuf had got arrested for domestic violence against Athena maybe a few months prior, they decided to do a stop by the house where she was last at, which was with Yusuf, and just do a walkthrough. And they called me back to say she's not here. Yeah, I know that she's not
No, that's true.
there. That's the whole point. We can't find her. And
Her wallet's left behind, her phone's left behind, her
yeah,
baby's left
her
behind.
baby's left behind. All them. So we at this point had been day 5, or and she left on Friday. That was a Tuesday. So then you talk about like we're way behind the ball game. I'm like, no, she hasn't been seen since Friday, which was the night I spoke with her, but didn't know that was the night that everything happened. And so
Yeah.
now I'm calling her, her phone's going to voicemail, and then finally I get a surprise text message from Yusuf saying, "Where's she at?" And that's how the ball start rolling.
Mhm.
And when I finally got the police to do a courtesy check, and they let me know that she wasn't there, I'm like, "Yeah, well, where do we go next?" When they said, "Hey, you could go to the media," I said, "Let's do it." At this point, I'm desperate. I go to the media, and it was because of the media coverage that in my opinion, that the police decided to now, you know, do some due diligence because now that people are going to be asking questions, and the detective got assigned to the case, and they came to interview me, and they were keeping me updated and keep me posted about well, really, they came to interview me, and then I remember the next visit, I can't remember the timeline. They did tell me that the case got moved from missing person to homicide. So for them to tell me that, I knew that they knew something. I didn't know what they knew, but that's what they told me. And they probably did tell me something like, well, we can't tell you how we know, but we're going to just tell you that's what we're doing. And to be honest, I think I was just really stoic when I heard that because in my heart, I felt like I already knew that. Like, I know her.
Mhm.
Nobody's
Yeah.
heard from her at all. Like, and I knew the violence of the relationship
Yeah.
at that point. And so, pretty much that's kind of how it went, and I think that they called Yusuf down to the station at one point, and he refused a lie detector test, and I knew that, and I would say one thing that always stands out in my mind that happened, and I can't remember the timeline once again, it may have been 6 months later, it could have been 8 months after the police were involved. I remember, I think his name was Lieutenant Sergeant, don't know the title, Garucci. He was like the head of the homicide unit in Atlanta Police Department. And I remember speaking to him and I was saying, "Hey," maybe asking for an update. And he said to me, um, "Well, you're pressing us to solve the case, but you didn't call us when and report all the abuse that happened prior." He said, "So you want us to be urgent, but you didn't do your part to prevent this from happening." I was just shocked that
Yeah.
that he was I thought that was so insensitive.
Turn it on you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
then he turned it on me, and I was saying, whoever knew that she was gonna turn it missing or dead? I'm like, there's the things I did know, things I didn't know. I said, yeah, if I could return, turn back as a time, I would have called the police every time I found out something happened. I said, but here we are. She's gone, and help me help you help. I said, don't you want to solve the case? Isn't that your job? And I was so heartbroken, and I couldn't believe that this is what he said. I
Yeah.
remember telling some family members this, and they told me to write a complaint. So I wrote down like a list of questions I had at this point to kind of become organized. And they did invite me down to the Atlanta Police Department to address my concerns. And a few concerns were there were some volunteer organizations who were willing to volunteer to bring out the cadaver dogs to look for
Mhm.
her. Um, I wanted to make that formal complaint about the fact that that lieutenant pretty much spun on me saying, why am I pressing them when I didn't report any of the abuse in the past? And, there was a few other things, or maybe just some other data that had come in. I remember specifically after she went missing, there was this email that came through that she tried to, um, pay for travel insurance for some flight. So it was like travel insurance purchased for a flight through a company called Travel Guard. And so I'm like, I have all this
After
stuff
she had gone missing.
after she got missing, a few months after she got missing. I think it was immediately after they called Yusuf in to be interviewed,
Mhm.
APD. Next thing you know, there's an email that came in that was from a company called Travel Guard that was purchasing travel insurance for a flight somewhere.
Mhm.
But there's no, we called that in. They had that insurance, but connected to what flight? You know, I sent all this information to APD, and they explained to me why they weren't going to get the cadaver dogs from the third party company that was volunteering. So that I think that's when I discovered that they had already did that. So there's things that they had done, and I didn't know half the things that they did. I was getting a lot of information from some reporters, investigative reporters who spoke to the police, and that and they were telling me, "Oh, did you know that they searched the landfills?" I was like, "They did? I never heard this." So there was a lot of things that they weren't sharing with me that,
Right.
and I can't corroborate because I'm hearing it from the reporters. I'm not quite sure what happened, what didn't happen, but so pretty much there's really no much communication with them. You know,
Mhm.
No really updates. There's things I did not know that happened. They kind of, well, one particular person, pretty much made me feel bad for that I'm pressing them to try to help solve the case. Um, and I mean, I don't know. I know that they probably see a lot of missing persons, a lot of
Yeah.
homicides, a lot of things, and to them, it's just maybe another name,
Yeah.
or number or whatever it is. But you have family members out here, who are missing their loved ones who would just like answers something. And I don't know. I would love for somehow there'd be some type of better relationship with that. I don't know what I could have done differently. And I kind of felt a little hopeless. It's not my hometown. I wasn't born and raised here.
Mhm.
I just felt I don't have connections and roots here. Didn't go to school here. So I just felt so disconnected. Um, didn't have much resources. And the people who I relied upon.
You did so much to have also, like you said, recently had gone through the divorce, the separation, changing homes, and everything that you had to deal with. And again, that is what strength looks like. It looks like you.
Thank you, sister.
And
And you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. And so yeah, I hope we can keep other families from having
Yeah.
to go through this. How do we keep our women safe, especially our Black women, but also our Latina women? Here in Minnesota, we deal a lot with Native American women who go missing. So that old line, see something, say something, sure, we can try that. At the same time, we also know, as I said earlier, it also sometimes makes it worse for people. We have to, we can report it, but I think it's about how can we help the victim survive? How can we get them out of that situation and in a place where the perpetrator cannot come after them? And we know some of them will go and they will travel across state lines
Yes.
to still come
Mhm.
after them. How can we, whether it's a man or a woman, all kinds of people are victims and perpetrators, keep them from ever becoming that type of person in the first place.
Right.
Um, what kind of childhood trauma or what kind of role model did they see that this is the person who they became as an adult? So there's so many different ways of approaching it, and it's individuals. We can't solve it ourselves. We can try as a collective, and as you said, it takes a village in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
hopefully we can see those numbers decrease because especially for Black missing and murdered women, the numbers do not look good. But
No, no. Yeah.
but yeah, we love you.
Thank you, sister.
Thank
And
you. Thank you for
I
raising
will
King.
say this. I have no idea what law can be passed. When you talk about, we have the Amber Alerts, we have other alerts, and I have
The
no idea.
Ashanti alert.
And I'm not familiar with that one. What that one is in particular. You may.
That was we have an Ashanti alert for Black women.
Oh, from Black.
'Cause
Okay, for the Black.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
Mhm.
That's right. My hope, and I don't have no idea how this would work, but there's gonna be something that is for, even though they're an adult, that the seriousness of a missing adult is, especially if there's prior abuse that's known or something,
Mhm.
that there could be some law that it doesn't have to be kind of put on the back burner. I don't know what that looks like, but if there's some lawmakers out there, somebody who has an idea how to make that something that's important, um, or some type of change, because like they know the sooner you can get on a case, the sooner things can get resolved. And, I think for missing adults, there's just not,
Yeah.
nothing to protect that.
Yeah. And that's a very good point because that the woman who I mentioned, Brittany Clarity, when she went missing because she was 18 already. So like Amber Alerts don't work for adults.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so there was some kind of a system put in place, I believe here in Minnesota to kind of help alert for women as well. As for Black missing and murdered women, I'll also say that Minnesota started an office for missing and murdered Black women. We have one also for the Native American women. And I know that Representative Ilhan Omar here in Minnesota had been trying to get legislation passed to make a national office, and it had bipartisan support. So hopefully there could be something like that as well. Yeah, and get
I
more of
think
a
that
federal look at all of this, and again for all women. So
all, yeah,
yeah,
and that's wonderful. If that could be something that could come out of all this, sometimes you lose somebody who you love, and that may be the loss, but it ends up saving somebody else in the future, and that's just kind of how life goes. If Athena's life ends up being, her life was lost because she could help be a part of a legislation that's passed, then we count it all good. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
Thanks for listening today. I'm Sheree Curry, and this has been This Conversation Matters on Power 104.7, supporting the mission of the Minnesota chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. Follow us on Instagram at NABJMN and me at Sheree Curry Media. And be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. Let's keep the conversation going.
Hey, I'm Natulia, and every week we take you beyond the story, an NABJ Minnesota program brought to you by All About the Culture and Power 104.7 FM. Beyond the Story introduces you to business owners, community leaders, and media professionals. It's never too late to pursue a dream. That's the lesson Shayla Reeves, an Emmy Award-winning anchor at WCCO TV, says she learned while writing her very first children's book. Echoes in the Distance tells the story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it was 20 years in the making. Here's her story, Beyond the Story.
My name is Shayla Michelle, and I'm the author of Echo in the Distance. When I completed the book, the publishing partner, which my publishing partner for this book is Melanin Origins. They're based in Texas. And they're like, so you have to give this book an age. I always say grades 3 through 5, but people who buy books for young readers. But the interesting thing is I've had people who have grandkids who were like, oh, my granddaughters are 6 and 8, but they really love this book. And they wanted to challenge themselves to read more difficult language. And so they were really excited to sit down and read this book. I have somebody who's got a 4-year-old son who, like, it's his favorite book. And there's something, I think, in the way that it reads. There's a lot of places in it where it calls for you to just listen as the thunder rumbles, just watch, where it's got the portions where it calls for your attention, where I think for younger listeners, even if you don't know how to read, the way that the language is structured, it still grabs your attention. And so I also look at it as a book where some people may say, well, the words may be hard. Well, history is hard too. And so we don't necessarily get to choose history. And so I don't think that you should choose to put down an interesting book because the words are hard. We can look up hard words, and we can also choose to stay engaged in an interesting book.
I'm Natulia, and this has been Beyond the Story, where the story continues beyond.